So, Jeremy Runnels, he's the perfect example of like looking at the representative of something instead of the something. So, an analogy I would give for Jeremy Runnels is like, let's say that there was a group that represented the sun, the sun that lights the earth. And they didn't control the sun. It's just that let's say that there was a race of people that lived under a canopy, a dark canopy, or even underground. And the sun was like alive and could talk to people. And the sun came to someone, so be like Joseph Smith, and said, "Hey, I'm real. I'm here, and I can help people feel better and be healthier and happier. And I want you to represent me, and then I want you to start a church." So that's kind of like what we got going on with Jeremy Runnels. It's like the church isn't true, and it's like, actually, in a sense, that's true. Like the church isn't Jesus or God. Like the people aren't God himself. In other words, it's like, it's not bottom up. It's top down. Because the letter to the CS letter, all this stuff, all anti-Mormon stuff, all the stuff that, they think that Mormons are doing wrong. It's like, does Jesus exist? It's like, that is what matters first. Who cares about the Mormon church? Like, who cares? Like, the most important thing is if Jesus exists. If Jesus exists, then he's involved in the Mormon church. Like, that's, like, just think about it. Like, if Jesus exists and he's real, he's going to be involved in the Mormon church. Maybe you don't have to believe he's involved in the hierarchy, but you gotta, if he exists, then he's a kind person, and he has a spirit, and he influences people, he interacts, he loves people, and you can talk to him through just talking to him, prayer, so it's like, it's almost like in the sun analogy where, like the sun that lights the earth, it's almost like a Jeremy Runnels would be like a person that would be like, well, the people that represent the sun, they're not true. And it's like, well, that's not really the issue. Because it's like me, like, I'm a Mormon, and I love the church because I love that God is involved, that he influences people. I love that there's people that love God. I love that there's people that want to do what God does. So that's how I view it, because I agree that the church isn't true in the sense that the church isn't God himself. Like, it's not like everybody in the church and the apostles and the prophets, they represent the kingdom of God. Like, they represent the kingdom of God on this earth. Do they do it poorly? Sure. Do they make mistakes? Are they weak? Fine. I mean, but you see what I'm saying? When you have an all-powerful thing, and then you have a weak thing, the weak thing is weak. It will always be weak. But what if the all-power thing is interacting with it? Then that's going to make the weak thing be something to pay attention to, So Jeremy Runnels is kind of like, I don't understand why people leave the church because of Jeremy Runnels. Because he's not attacking God. He's not attacking Jesus. He's not saying Jesus doesn't exist. Or maybe he is. I haven't read the letter. But to me, it's like, we're here on this earth. Why don't we go to the greatest truths? Why don't we go to the greatest powers? It's like, It's like if there was a doctor who could heal through hydrogen peroxide therapy or ozone or whatever, and it's like, well, I don't like that doctor's attitude, so I'm not going to go get that treatment. In other words, we're sick spiritually, and we don't want to be under the power of Satan. What if Satan is real? See, that's the issue. Like, leaving the church is like, okay, well, what if God is real? What if he really appeared to Joseph Smith? What if what if all these things do happen that, because I think God would even agree with Jeremy Runnels. Like, I think even God himself would agree, like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm dealing with people who sin. I'm dealing with people who have faults. But I'm also dealing with people who really love me and really do want to serve me. I mean, look at President Monson. Does he seem like a selfish person? First, there's two questions you got to ask about President Monson. Does he seem like a selfish person as far as the type of person he is? And number two, does he seem like a person who wants to believe in a lie? Does he seem like a person who wants to propagate a lie, who doesn't really believe in God, doesn't really believe in Jesus? It's like, I think those two questions are easy to answer, but it's so weird. It's so weird that people can't tolerate weakness, but God can. Like, people can't tolerate Mormons because they see the motes or the beams, whatever they see. They see the beams, they see the motes in their eyes, and it's like, wouldn't it be weird if people who criticize the church, people who say the church is false, wouldn't it be weird if the world ended and then people saw God and they saw Jesus and they're like, and they have no faults. Like, people learn that God is completely honest and he has a lot of power, and Jesus is a very loving person, very forgiving. And then you learn that God did work with the Mormon leadership. He did work with Mormons. And maybe then they would learn about God in the sense that he knows he's not seen. He knows he can't force people to do things, but if you want to work with him through his spirit, you can. But you can be weak too. You don't have to be the smartest person in the world. It's like, if you just want to work for me, like he says, if you want to work for me, you can do it. So I think a lot of the people who leave the church, a lot of the people who resonate with John Dehlin and Runnels, Jeremy Reynolds, running away from what's most important, it's like, why did you run away from the church? Because think about this, even if the church had a 1% connection to God, why would you leave it? Like, if anything has a connection to God, it's like, there's people that have goodness and can bring goodness into your life. You don't ever go to somebody and say, well, you're not 100% good, so I'm not going to hang around you. Oh, you're only 20% good. It's like, if somebody can bring some good in your life, if there's truth out there, then that's all that matters. You got to ask yourself, does truth matter if you're following Jeremy Runnels? And what I'm saying is this: does it matter to you if Jesus is real? Is salvation real? Is resurrection real? Was Jesus born on this earth? That's really the most important thing, and you can't know that unless you want to. I mean, if you, it's like anything in life. If you don't want to know, bazinga, like you won't know. Like, if there's things out there that can make you healthier, but you don't want to know, well, then you'll never know what can make you healthier. It's like, if you want to be righteous, you'll find out a way to be righteous if you want to be good and all this stuff. So a letter to CS letter, letter to the CES? The CES letter, it's like, it's so popular. It's so weird. I mean, I guess anything's going to be popular if it's, if someone takes the time and writes out, here's where the Mormon church is wrong and stuff like that. But it's like, what if somebody wants to read something like that? What if they don't want? What if the group that is following Jeremy Runnels, what if they're in a spiritual state where they don't want to know? If they don't have the desire to know if Jesus is real. One thing in the Mormon church that we're taught is that everybody will be tested in everything. And that kind of makes sense, in Mormon doctrine. If we're here to be tested, it's like, well, you need to be tested at everything. Because if okay, so yeah, I mean, it's amazing the mindset, because it's like, there have been people in the history of the world who would love to know more about Jesus, and there's people who used to, they couldn't even have a Bible. And now it's almost like we're too spoiled with Jesus. We have so much more information about Jesus. We have the Nephite record, the people that he worked with spiritually and physically. And then we have Joseph Smith. We have the prophets who work in the spirit with God, and they're always testifying that they know that Jesus is real. Well, how do they know? Do they know through the spirit? Do they know because they've seen him physically, or is it both? So that's just crazy, man. So crazy times. And I just think that it's like, people follow Jeremy Runnels, and it's like, well, that's fine, if he doesn't like certain things of the church, or if you're convinced that the church is lying. But your body is yours, and you need to don't you need to decide? Don't you want to know what's going to happen to you after you die? Don't you want to know if the resurrection could be real? And that's another thing. People say, well, a lot of religions are true, and whatever. And it's like, but you know what? As far as life after death, the Christian religion seems the most practical, the most real, because it's like, you are going to be resurrected. You're going to have your body again forever. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. Because, a lot of religions, they either don't know, or they just say you'll be a spirit. And it's like, I think a lot of us are spoiled. But spoiled's not the right word. I think a lot of us are take it for granted, or, it's like, we see the faults, so-called faults. It's like, well, hopefully there are faults. It's like, you want there to be faults, because guess what? We all have faults. Everyone has faults, because we're mortal. That's the thing. Is God just because of the natural laws and everything, God couldn't come down here and live with us